generations to come.
And welcome to another edition of the TDN Writers Room podcast. My name is Bill Finley. I'm a correspondent for the TDN. I also co-host the Down the Stretch show on Sirius XM Radio.
Hey guys, good morning. I'm Randy Moss, NBC Sports, trusty sidekick Lucy in her usual position.
Zoe Cadman here with First Racing and XBTV. Doodle's still in bed. It's 6 a.m. West Coast time. Good morning, guys. Got a nice cup of tea here, and I'm ready to get going.
Yeah, thank you for getting up early for us today, Zoe, as we tape this on a Tuesday morning. And want to remind you that the Writers Room is brought to you each week by Keeneland. And speaking of Keeneland, let's start off with the story of the sales of this week. And Zoe, we're going to lean a lot on you because this is not really a field of expertise for me and Randy, but it's a familiar story. But I think the story is even bigger this year of the top end selling great. And then when you get outside the top end, when you get outside the book one type horses, there's been problems. So the good news for Keeneland, they saw a successful book one last Wednesday with a 30% increase in median from book one last year and a slight 8% decrease in average compared to last year. So book one went fine. Since then, numbers were down later in the week, a 15.1% decrease in average and 20% drop in median in book two. Cumulatively through Sunday, we're at a 16.54% decrease in average overall. We're seeing, again, a polarization of the market, but this is probably the strongest example yet of that trend. And we're getting high demand for quality offerings, but horses that might be lacking in pedigree, physical, or other elements will often be offered at discounted rates for the buyers. Zoe, what does it all mean?
I think you pretty much summed it up right there, Bill. It's polarization in the market. What we've seen over the past couple of years is people keeping their better stock. So before we'd see these pinhookers come in and buy a weaning for 100,000, they'd sell it for 500. Now the people that own the weanlings are keeping those justifies. They're keeping the good ones for September. They're not going to say, oh, here's Peter O'Callahan. Sorry, Pete. From here he comes. I'm going to sell him my really nice baby for 150, for 250, so he can make $1 million next year. It's just not happening. People are culling their lesser stock, especially with the foals, and they're going to keep them for themselves, maybe to race or maybe to see if they can have that kind of return on investment for next year. So that's the simple fact of the matter. It is a buyer's market. Like if I was there shopping, Moret's there shopping, she's bought a couple of lovely mares and she's absolutely delighted. This is a time where if you've got a little bit of money in your pocket, you can sift through these horses and you can buy the good ones. The ones that are making the money, people are just zoning in on. Are they really that good? I'm not quite sure they are, but they're the same horses that tick all the boxes, as everyone likes to say, that people are honing in on, and those ones are going to make the money that you take them up there. The rest of them, people are going to cull them, they're going to look through them, and they're going to maybe find some bargains, or maybe you're going to take them home. People are being much more selective in this day and age, and I think what you're going to see for next year's yearling market is that the trend is going to continue. The good ones that have been kept out of these sales are going to sell for $1 million. I mean, if you take something up there that's worth 150,000, 200, you're probably going to make a lot more money than you are if you're going to take one that looks like a $20,000 horse. It's just the simple fact of the matter that I think people are tired of other people making money.
And Zoe, if this continues, this trend continues, what does it all mean for horse racing and for the breeding market?
I mean, the horses are still there. You're going to have a lot more homebreds, which is what we're going to have going forward. And the people with the money are still going to make money and they're still going to be able to pinhook. Now, it's probably going to tipple over into the 2-year-old market as well. And at some point it has to stop, but the interest rates are still high. People with a lot of money are still going to be able to make a lot of money. It's just affecting the middle market, which is basically the glue that keeps it all together. So while it is concerning, I think we're literally going to see a lot more homebreds coming out onto the racetrack, which in my mind is a good thing. The less these horses go through the sales, the less hard it is, and the less people tinker with them. So I'm all for homebreds. Hopefully the breeding industry doesn't go down anymore as far as foals to ground, because I think we're just about the right level right now. And we'll just have to keep an eye on it moving forward. But yeah, polarization is the name of the game.
So as far as the upper end showing a significant increase, our Green Group guest of the week this week is John Stewart. Can't wait to hear from him. He just took the Keeneland sales by storm. Right. How much can the impact of that one guy have on the overall numbers for the upper end?
Well, you saw how high the median was. Now, he's probably done shopping because he's shopping at the upper end, and those days have already gone. He doesn't want to have the horse he can afford. He wants the one he really wants. What did he say? He's not a bidder. He's a buyer. Like he just wants to buy something. He doesn't want to bid on a horse. He wants to buy a horse. So he's likely done for the Keeneland sale. He already spent at the top end, which is probably why the median was up for book one, partly thanks to John Stewart. But hey, listen, anytime someone wants to come into our industry and dump a whole bunch of money, what is wrong with that? What is someone with good thoughts towards the sport? I applaud him. And I wish we had more billionaires like John Stewart in the sport to bid against. Maybe he could bid against another billionaire. We have plenty of them. Come on in, guys. Come on in. You're welcome.
Yeah, you can never have too many billionaires now, can you? All right. So speaking of the Keeneland sale, we're going to turn the page and do a horses of racing age sale. And this is one of the most fascinating things that I don't recall ever seeing a Kentucky Derby winner being sold at auction like this. And of course, we're talking about Rich Strike. They tried to get him back to the races. There even was the trainer change with bringing him over to Bill Mott. But the things that were bothering him were serious enough that Mott and owner Rick Dawson decided that he could not race anymore. So the only thing to do now is to try to prepare him for a stallion career. Rather than putting in a deal and finding a farm, they're going to put him in the sales ring and let the industry and let the bidders themselves decide where he goes. I guess there's two questions here. First of all, how much will he sell for? And who will he sell for? Zoe, this is more, again, a question for you because you're the expert. How much will he sell for? My answer would be not very much. And where will he go or who will buy him? My answer will be not anybody in Kentucky, maybe a foreign market, maybe a small regional market. I wish them well, but nothing about this horse says he's going to break the bank.
I know, it's a shame. The owner's got plenty of money. I don't know why he wouldn't try and stand him somewhere like Pennsylvania. I mean, he's a beautiful looking horse. He won the Kentucky Derby. Yeah, he's by keen eyes. But, if you look past that pedigree, it does go back to some pretty nice horses. So I don't know where he's going to land. There are several other nice horses in there. You got First Captain, the Dwyer winner. He's in there. King Fury's in there. Hey, you can buy Tarico if you're a fan of Mike Tirico. He's in there as well. So as far as Rich Strike, I don't know. I wouldn't. It depends what the reserve is, because I'm going to guess that guy's got a pretty high reserve on him, and maybe he wants to see where the market takes him. But I can't think of who wants him. I mean, he should stand in a regional market. Why couldn't he? Well, he's a beautiful horse.
I'll offer a guess. I hope Rich Strike likes sushi.
Ooh, why Japan, Randy?
Yeah, why not?
Why? Because they've got a past history of buying classic winning horses from the United States that aren't that highly thought of as stallion prospects in this country. Okay. It's happened a lot. If not classic winners, horses that have performed well on the racetrack in the United States, and they brought them over there, and they've done fairly well. I mean, most recently, Mind Your Biscuits.
All right, the over-under on what he sells for, I'll set it at $500,000. I'll go under.
Really? Over for me.
Yeah, over. I'm going to say probably 1.2.
Wow.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, 1.2. We're thinking
1.2.
Certainly, we're not quite on the same page there, but we shall see what happens. The other big story at the sales of Fasig-Tipton, the Night of the Stars, both Goodnight Olive and Nest were bought. Nest was bought by Mike Rapoli to buy out the partners, and Goodnight Olive was bought by our upcoming Green Group guest of the week, John Stewart. Both will be coming back to race next year. Terrific news to see two of the best fillies of their recent times coming back, and we really look forward to seeing them get back onto the track. And maybe Goodnight Olive can win a third straight Breeders' Cup Filly and Mayor's Sprint.
Don't see why not. She left at the top of her game, and just looking at her physically, she is absolutely gorgeous. I'm not so sure about Ness, to be perfectly honest, because she tailed off quite significantly, but certainly Goodnight Olive, yes. We've mentioned Keeneland a lot already, and the TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Keeneland. The Keeneland November breeding stock sale is going on now and will wrap up on Thursday. And after that, we mentioned Rich Strike and several others. The Horses of Racing Age sale will see 300 horses go through the ring, including the Kentucky Derby winner, Rich Strike, over $1.2 million. We're betting a Coke on that, as well as Grade 2 winning millionaire, Smile Happy, and oh, so much more. We'll be right back after this message from Keeneland.
At Keeneland, a horse will always be measured in hands. Hands that see, that sense, that speak. Hands that hold our sport to a higher standard, not for our sake, but for theirs, for the love of the horse, for generations to come.
The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by the Fast Sires at One Star Farm, the sponsor of our weekly Fastest Horse of the Week segment. This week's Sire at One Star that we're going to spotlight, my favorite 3-year-old of 2023. You know who that is? Two Phils, the runner-up in the Kentucky Derby, retired, after another stakes win following the Kentucky Derby. He ran some of the highest buyers around 2 turns of any 3-year-old this year, and his Kentucky Derby number itself, 105, was equal to or higher than every other Derby winner for the past 15 years. And don't forget, he did that while being in close proximity to a very fast early pace. A 2-time stakes winner. Also, as a 2-year-old, Two Phils is standing his first year at Windstar Farm in 2024 for a fee of $12,500. This week's Sire of the Week at Windstar, Two Phils. Now the fastest horse of the week from a buyer's speed figure perspective, trained by, guess who? Rick Dutrow. It's Masterpiece, the winner of the Red Smith at Aqueduct on Saturday. Masterpiece recorded a buyer speed figure in that race of 99. So Dutrow not only with Wida Barrio and another stakes winner in the interim, now the fastest horse of the week. Masterpiece also from the growing now Rick Dutrow barn.
So this Sunday, I think all of us were glued to our televisions with 60 Minutes did a piece on horse racing. And it was not a pretty piece. It was really about all the problems that the sport is having right now, primarily with drugs and breakdowns. I thought for the most part it was fair. One thing I think that they kind of went overboard that I didn't agree with is I thought they kind of tried to say that the breakdowns and the doping were interrelated. Sometimes they may be, I suppose, but that's not the case. They're two very different issues. It's not like every horse that breaks down is because the trainer gave them some performance enhancing drugs. They did a good job presenting, I think, both sides of the issues. Several people from within the racing industry, including Lisa Lazarus, were allowed time to say, hey, look, we have a problem here, but we're trying our best and we are making progress and we are going to fix this. But now if we take a big step backward, here we go again to one of the most famous television shows there is, with an audience of several million people. I believe it was about 12 million people watched this, were exposed to horse racing's problems. And when you put them down on paper, it doesn't look good. It's not a good look. So, it's, I wouldn't call it a hit job by any stretch of the imagination. I think it just told the story of what is going on in horse racing, going back at least several years, at least since the indictments of Service in Navarro in March 2020, maybe even before that with the Santa Anita breakdowns. And as we look in the mirror, it's not a good look.
I was struck watching the 60 Minutes show, and especially in hindsight, by one thing. By a lot of things, really, but one thing in specifically, the lack in the thoroughbred racing industry of an effective PR spokesperson. Okay. Lisa Lazarus has done a really good job at HISA. It's a continuing job. It's a thankless job. Lisa Lazarus is not intended to be, and I don't think sees herself necessarily as a mouthpiece, as a spokesperson for the thoroughbred industry. She's an administrator. She's in charge of taking care of HISA and getting all the details right and making sure legally that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. She's not a PR type spokesperson. To me, that segment on 60 Minutes cried for somebody within the thoroughbred industry who could answer some of those very negative leading questions in a way like this. Just say, look, this is a wonderful sport. It's a traditional sport. It's part of Americana. Horses, by and large, get wonderful care and they're loved by the people who have them. But yes, like most other professional sports, horse racing has problems. And it has problems that have not been adequately addressed over the decades by the states. It has problems that we're attempting to address right now. We're making headway. We're not there yet. It does have a dark side if we don't get these problems taken care of. And we're efforting tremendously to get this sport right back on the right track. There are a lot of great things about the sport. People who love the sport will attest to that. But yes, it has its needs that we're trying to address. I didn't really hear any of that. And I think it was an important omission from the industry perspective on that 60 Minutes telecast.
Randy for spokesperson. I vote for that. But you're right. We do need a better spokesperson. And Lisa Lazarus is doing an excellent job. But I mean, how many jobs does she need? She shouldn't have to go in front of the camera every time somebody calls her, but she does because there's nobody else. So hire someone to do that. That's your job. Hire someone else. Hire an actor if you want to. That would be great. We need someone with a good voice that can really articulate what perhaps we can't get across. They could have mentioned the drop in fatalities. You never really want to say that 69 horses died last year, but 69 compared to 112 just in 2017 is a significant drop. Why not just mention that? Mention some good things about the sport. Joanne Hayden is a dear friend of mine. She runs Dark Hollow Farm along with her husband in Maryland and wrote a big, long page and is sending it to 60 Minutes. Hey, listen, we're in the Maryland horse industry. We put millions of dollars into paying taxes. Like, the industry needs us. How about we put some of the good things in here? I mean, the facts are irrefutable. Nobody can deny what has happened. We're glad those people are behind bars. But put some good in there to the 12 million people that watch 60 Minutes. Don't make them condemn them. Because if I'm showing it to my boyfriend who can't spell horse, if he's watching that, he's going to say, what the hell are you doing in horse racing? That's just terrible. Because he doesn't know. He doesn't know the good things about the sport. He doesn't know the pluses. All he knows is the minuses. We need more people on the plus end. One thing I took umbrage with, and I watched it, and I actually heard Jay Priven mention it as well, was the quote from Stewart Janney. And I know Stewart, and he's a good guy, and he's trying to take the sport by the reins and just shake it up. He said, the important people that I think are cheating in the sport, that's who he put 5 stones onto. The important people that I think are cheating in the sport. That's fine. So who did you investigate of the important people that proved to be not cheaters? Why can't we have those names out there? Surely they investigated more people than just Navarro and Service. What about the rest? Who else did they investigate?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone who thinks that Bob Baffert wasn't a target is probably in denial.
So he wasn't in there. So he's clean, right? So why aren't we mentioning that? Why can't we mention the people that already jumped the hurdles and passed the test? Let's have some good stuff in here. I mean, that's the only thing that I took a little bit of umbrage from. The facts are irrefutable. Nobody can deny that. But it's 60 minutes.
Yeah, and what you're talking about, Zoe, I mean, you don't have to be stretching the truth in terms of positivity to make some of those points, because the fatalities have significantly gone down, and there has been progress made on a lot of different fronts, including medication in the sport. Is it where we want it to be? Is it where it needs to be? No. But at least the needle is moving in the right direction, and it wouldn't be, being falsely positive to make some of those points.
Randy, overall, what does a segment like this do to horse racing's image? I mean, it's already been bloodied and sullied so much as it is, and then here you have a huge media outlet picking up on something. And that's the thing. I don't think they didn't come up with anything new. No. Which, I was a little bit disappointed. They just rehashed everything that has happened so far. But again, we talk about that. How many of these, attacks can horse racing sustain and hope at the end of the day, still be standing upright?
There was nothing new, and horse racing has taken so many punches to the solar plexus in the last year with all the horse deaths in Kentucky, and then the horse deaths at Saratoga, et cetera. I'm not sure this has any, great negative effect. It certainly doesn't have a positive effect. What I'm curious about, I would like to know the genesis of this particular story.
I was wondering that too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is not something that I would think that a 60 Minutes producer is sitting around saying, okay, there's nothing new here, but let's make a 60 Minute story out of this. Mm-hmm. Maybe that'll come out at some point, exactly who called their attention to this and why this ended up on 60 Minutes as it did. But do I think it did a tremendous amount of damage to the sport that hadn't already occurred? No, because I don't think there was anything really new. And if anything, if you want to, try to spin something positive out of it, we've got 2 people sitting in prison as a result of an FBI investigation. So in terms of cleaning up the sport, progress is being made. The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by the PHBA, the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association. Pennsylvania breds continued to win around the country last week. This time, Crosby Beach held on late to win the final race of the Santa Anita Autumn Meet. Pennsylvania bred Crosby Beach, bred by Kathy Mabey and Gary Gimo. Meanwhile, the last leg of that $1 million 2-year-old PA Sire PA bred stallion series set for December 27th, 2 $200,000 races at 1 mile and 70 yards. Again, check the pabred.com website to make sure your 2-year-old is nominated. Any questions, email info@pabred.com.
PA Bred, I think we've built a brand at this point.
The state of Pennsylvania has the best breeders program in the entire United States.
Angel of Empire wins the Arkansas Derby and wins it clear.
Caravel in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint.
Pennsylvania and the PHBA have the best state-bred program in the country, bar none. The best Breeders' Awards and Stallion Awards in the country.
The TDN Writers Room brought to you by the Green Group, a tax consulting and advisory firm specializing in the thoroughbred industry and especially focusing on saving you money on your taxes.
And we welcome in now the Green Group guest of the week. It is John Stewart. And if you haven't been paying attention to what this gentleman has been doing at the sales of late, you just haven't been paying attention, period. This is what I can tell you about John Stewart. He dropped out of college at age 19 to work at Toyota as an hourly line worker, worked his way up through business, and was the founder and managing partner of Middle Ground Capital, a private equity firm. And then lo and behold, at September Keeneland, he shows up and spends an awful lot of money, buys 13 yearlings for $8.425 million, then returns for Fasig-Tipton November and Keeneland November, buys 11 more mares and yearlings for $17.35 million. So, John, that's part of your story. The story that we don't know is why and when did you decide to not only get involved in horse racing, but to jump right into the deep end?
Well, if you get to know me, you'll find out that I don't do anything halfway. And so, I bought my first horse last year and I went through a divorce. And while I was going through when I was married, my wife never wanted me to get into the horse racing. I always had a passion for it and went to the races and enjoyed it. And then I got divorced. So I was like, okay, I'll buy a racehorse. And so I bought a racehorse last year. And as I started, learning more about the industry, so I tend to, just different things that I get into. I want to research everything. I want to know everything. I want to know the history. I want to know so much about it. And I've always respected the industry and how important it is to the Kentucky community and to the economy of the state and especially to the Lexington area. And, as sometimes, as I've been able to get successful in my career with my business, it affords you the opportunity to get involved in things that you're passionate about and try to, make an impact for people other than yourself. And so, horse racing is one of the areas that I'm, passionate about. I understand the importance it has on the local economy. I think it's become, less relevant today than it was maybe 30 years ago in our area. And, even like I think Ocala, Florida would challenge us for horse capital, of at least North America, and we would say horse capital of the world. But now when you look at what's going on all over the world, there would be people that probably would challenge us in that too. And I think it's important, I felt like it was important to get involved and get involved in a big way so that I could help, change that narrative for the state and for the local area.
So, John, you went to the University of Kentucky. You wanted to get in the horse business, but your ex-wife didn't really want you to. How did this kind of passion for horse racing, you used the word passion, how did it originate?
Well, so I didn't go to the University of Kentucky. I actually, so I went to Campbellsville University, which is a small school in Campbellsville, Kentucky, played football and baseball there, dropped out my freshman year because Toyota was building their largest facility in the world in Georgetown. And a bunch of guys on the football team were like, hey, let's go apply for this place. And I was the only person that ended up getting hired and dropped out. My parents weren't very happy about me dropping out of school. And then, I ended up getting my degree while I was working at Toyota. And then, the rest is kind of history on my business side. But, the passion's always been there. I've always enjoyed everything around the industry and the excitement. The awesomeness of the animals and, their ability to, train and achieve. I mean, when you get to know the animals, they want to race, they like, when they get ready in the morning, they're ready to go and they want to go work and they enjoy it. And even when a horse, retires, it needs to work. It needs something to do because they're very intelligent animals. And so, I can relate to all of that. I'm the kind of person, I don't think I'll actually retire. I think I'll need to work. I started out as a line worker, as a blue collar worker. And, I put that emphasis into everything. And so, like I said, if I decide to do something, I'm not going to do anything, halfway. I'm never the type of person that was just going to own shares of horses or, and just kind of like piddle around with it and let someone else, do all the work. And so once over the last year, I've been doing a lot of research and to be fair, at Keeneland, the team didn't have the intention to jump in as deeply as I did, good thing they were prepared. Gavin and Chelsea had gone out and reviewed, I think 160 horses, with the idea that we were going to purchase 2. And And then, I decided to accelerate that. And I had told them before, that anything I do, I'm going to do all the way. And, as I started really understanding like what, for my goals, to start a breeding and a racing operation, you need numbers. And, you have to be lucky at the end of the day to win these big races. Like all the horses that are in the Kentucky Derby, they're all, competitive horses and have had accomplished, records in their own right. But you need luck, at the end of the day in order to be able to do that. So you can't rely solely on just like buying the best. You also have to have numbers because, things happen, there are injuries, just like any sport. And so I decided that, I needed more bullets in the chamber. And, everybody was advising me to stick with, buying fillies and mares, from the money making angle of the business. But, if you're going to have a racing program, you have to have colts, and so that's where we really came out in a big way at Keeneland was, we bought a lot of colts because, I wanted to start getting the pipeline full of horses for racing.
Well, good morning, John. I'm so sorry I'm late. I am obviously not very smart and got 8:30 as not 5:30 in the morning out here in Southern California. So it's lovely to see you. You're a lovely face to look up to in the morning. And I'm just really intrigued about everything. I think I got in kind of the gist of it. I have one question. Who's Gavin O'Connor and Chelsea? Because it just seems like everyone all jumped in at the same moment and just blew Keeneland up. Because I was at Keeneland and we were like, who's John Stewart? Oh my God, who is this guy, John Stewart? He's just buying everything. So how did you guys all connect?
Yeah, so Gavin, I met a few years ago. He actually used to date somebody that worked at my firm. And so I got to know him. He's a, third generation horseman. He's been in the industry, from, a young age. Two of his uncles are really, well-established bloodstock agents. His father, his grandfather was a really prestigious reporter in Ireland that, wrote a, kind of daily piece about the industry. And so he's been around the industry his whole life and, was literally, he's the, he's the guy that helps the horses get together, at Coolmore. So he, is, I don't know what the technical term for like penis inserter is in the horse industry, but, that's what he did, and, so he, this is a guy that like literally, started his career, as a stable boy, and starts working his way, through the industry, literally, taking any job just so he could be around the horses because he has that much love for the horses. And, he's done a couple of, pin hooking and some things like that everybody does when they, start out. And he's had some success with that. He bought my horse last year. And, another big reason I'm doing this is I really believe in him and the work ethic that he has and, the opportunity to do something to give somebody an opportunity is something that gives me a lot of joy. I think he's deserving of the opportunity. Like I said, he went out and reviewed 160 horses at Keeneland thinking I was going to buy maybe 2, right? And then, as we started buying horses at Keeneland, he's the one on me pumping the brakes, going, whoa, and, he's getting a commission on everything that I buy. So, he's just a wonderful horseman. And, this is a great opportunity for him. I hope he gets like more clients, out of this. But he's my bloodstock agent. He's new to be announced first on here. He's going to be the general manager of our new farm that we're purchasing. And is going to be running that operation. We've got some like senior level advisors that are going to, of course, be advising us. We've hired a farm manager for the farm as well. And so we're, he's going to be a big part of the operation on a go forward basis. And I really trust, his instincts on these horses. And I think if you look at the quality of the purchases that we've made, those horses, absent the one full brother to Practical Joke that I kind of went on my own and bought, he's picked every one of those horses, and went through him and Chelsea both. And so Chelsea's my girlfriend. And so, post divorce, I met Chelsea. She rides saddlebred horses and has been around the horse industry. She used to work for Gainesway, so she also knows Thoroughbred's bloodline specifically. She's very well versed in the bloodlines of the horses. And so her and Gavin work together to pick the horses and go through and kind of vet them. And then I'll come out and review them. And then, ultimately, it's my decision on, which ones we're purchasing and how many we're purchasing. But that's how we're kind of handling that part of the business.
John, you are involved right now. You've been buying just about everything there is to buy: weanlings, broodmares, yearlings, weanlings, everything there is. And you're also, as you mentioned, buying a farm. So when you take a look at that, where is this all going? What is going to be the scope of your operation? Where is this going to be 10 years from now?
Yeah. So, what I'm trying to do, of course, I've got a lot of ground to make up. And, as someone that's, going to jump right in, you can't just buy a bunch of yearlings and just kind of wait to see them kind of like, mature. You have to fill in the gaps. And so we're buying some horses, that are racing. And so we bought Goodnight Olive, and she's going to continue to race next year, probably the best sprinting horse that we've seen in, a few decades in the U.S. And we just bought another Justify filly, Celtic Charm, who runs on the 26th at Churchill Downs, won her maiden at Keeneland, bought her from Mike Ryan. And so we're starting to buy some, horses that'll be running as well. So we can, that's the enjoyable part of the sport, of course, is the racing part of it, and want to have racers, and then trying to fill in, with weanlings, brood mares. So we want to have a whole breeding operation. We're not going to be doing training on the farm. It's going to be more breeding. We will have stallions on the farm at some point. Gavin's trying to rein me in, from going toe to toe with some of the big guys on purchasing like the next big stallion, and telling me to be patient. And so I may or may not listen to him. But what I want to do is, when you look at these bloodlines these days, it's really challenging when you go and you see so many horses being bred every year to these stallions. And I just don't think there's the quality of mares that should be out there breeding to these quality stallions at 200 plus covers a year, not even counting if they go to South America and cover horses there. And I think it's dilutive. So you take something that's real high quality, and when you overproduce it, you create a commodity, right? And so like I think Into Mischief had 140 colts for sale at Keeneland yearling auction. What if there were only 40 available? Like what would have they demanded from a value and a price perspective? And so I think there's, if you go back 30 years in the industry and look at where people were breeding the horses for racing and not turning into like a mass market breeding operation. And look, I don't think there's anything wrong with some of the larger farms. I understand, there's an economic side of this. They found a way to be profitable, which is very good for them and for the industry. And I'm not trying to like change that. I mean, that's not going to happen. But when you look at the bloodlines, I would like to see the bloodlines being deeper. I would like to see more quality horses at every level when you go to purchase those horses. And I think one of the ways to achieve that is to control that, breeding operation, control who's breeding, have quality stallions, and control the covers, control who they're breeding to at a much, tighter extent. I think it increases the value of the horses. And being from Kentucky, as I mentioned, I think that we're still very relevant in the industry, but we're, I think arguably less relevant than we were 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 75 years ago. And, I want to maintain that relevance. I think the bloodlines, in the industry, especially for the Kentucky horsemen, we need to think about those as our intellectual property. And you just don't let that intellectual property go to the highest bidder, wherever it goes, and they take that bloodline away. It was a lot of my motivation for purchasing Goodnight Olive, when I saw, that the Japanese had, kind of honed in and were looking to take her overseas, and I wasn't going to have the best sprint horse, that we've seen, at least in the last 10 years, leave the country and go over there. And so, I wanted to make sure that was the type of quality. So it was a little bit of me making a statement that, there's almost no cost to keeping these horses over here. And, I have the means and the ability to do that. Ultimately, I think it makes a profitable operation. As you mentioned, where does this 10 years from now? I think you're going to see, hopefully our farm, you'll see the quality of horses that are coming out of that farm will be something that people want to have the opportunity to purchase. And so, bringing that scarcity of supply back into demand and, concentrating the bloodlines and trying to make better quality horses.
I got a couple questions, John. First of all of us, we've been around a while, and everybody in racing has bemoaned what we would consider the early retirement of racehorses that are at the top of their game, like Goodnight Olive. What's the immediate plan for Goodnight Olive? Does she stay with Chad?
She left the day after we bought her. She's down with Chad, and she's going to take some time off. She's going to, get some paddock time and, get some downtime. With talking with Chad, we don't think that there's any quality races of her caliber that are, on the calendar in the near term. So we're not going to just race her to race her. We're going to wait probably till Keeneland, and we'll probably come out, for the sprint there. And then we'll, start her season there and look for her to make a chance to have a three-peat at the Breeders' Cup. And, I think if you saw the way that she ran at the Breeders' Cup, I mean, she, again, to your point, I'm the same way. I think, when you look back, there are horses that were running at, 7, 8, 9, even, 10 years old, decades ago. And now, as soon as they get to like a point where people think there's a lot of value in them, we're retiring them, and then they move into breeding. Same thing on the stallion side. And so, I think these horses have a lot more, opportunity. Again, I think they like that competitive part of the business. They like to race. They like to win. They want to know what's happening. If you've been around the industry, these horses they're affected, by the race, mentally and physically, impact it. And I agree with you. I think, some of these horses can run, longer. And when you're not focused on the breeding element to make all of your return on your horses, I think you're freed up to, play that option value on the length of time those horses race out a little bit more. And I think it's good for the industry. And I think there's it's a coexisting model. I'm not, trying to advocate that everybody needs to do it the way that I do it. I have an idea about doing it a little bit different and kind of going back kind of to an old school approach, not really inventing anything myself, but really looking to the past to guide, our success. And but I agree with you. I think some of these horses are retiring too early, especially, on the stallion side. And with the mares as well. And, I think people want to see these good horses continue to run and have the opportunity to enjoy them because there's, Goodnight Olive has a pretty big fan base. And that's something else, that I want to be more transparent from the very early stages. And so you're going to see we're bringing on a social media person that's going to be, putting a lot of emphasis on just trying to show like the next stallion in the making. So you'll be able to follow all of our, weanlings and the colts and fillies that we purchased, through their training, onto the track, all kind of the behind the scenes of what's going on and providing that access because I think the people want it and, are very interested in getting, that kind of access, into, how this is put together. So, as we're doing this venture, I want to be very transparent with, the other fans of horse racing so that they can kind of see, how this is developing.
And tell us about the farm. You've mentioned the farm purchase now several times.
Yeah, so that's been really exciting. So I started looking at farms right after the Keeneland sale and looked at several in the area. There are, several for sale here in Lexington area and decided on the Shadwell property out at Midway, And so, we put an offer in. They've accepted that offer. It's a little over 800 acres. It's the Shadwell stud operation, very well built and maintained. Give the hats off to the team at Shadwell. I mean, that property is immaculate. The buildings are, in a perfect shape. There's no way the replacement value on the improvements that they put on the site are, just really impressive. And so, super excited about that. We're finalizing our diligence period, and we should close around December 18th, on the property. And the property has 4 houses for the farm workers, but no main house. And I think having a main house on the property would make it more, relevant. And so, I intend to build a house and live there as well on the farm, and, kind of go back to the roots of old school owner operator, horse farm. Not, even though I have an investment background, I am from the local area. I have homes, all over the world, but having this be my home base in Lexington and making it, significant from that standpoint, I think is good. It preserves the land. That's important. You guys have seen these horse farms that are getting purchased and they get broke up and they're making subdivisions and things. And so it preserves the property. That's one of the goals that I have. And then, being able to do this in the local community, create jobs. And my approach on the farm is going to be different. All of the senior management team on the farm is going to have equity interest in the farm. I don't know that there's other farms that actually do that. And so that's something as an investor, I do it with every company I own. All of the management team, they have equity interest, that I fund on their behalf, so that we're aligned and we have aligned interests. So like our farm manager, our general manager, those people, our yearling manager, those people will have, real equity interest in the farm. And if 20 years down the line, I sell the farm, then they'll get, paid just like I'll get paid. If the farm's successful, they'll be successful. And so, we're going to be doing some different things, and really excited about getting the farm up and running. It's going to take time, with the mares we just purchased that are in foal. We're going to actually let them foal those horses at Margot farm. I don't want to take any risk of bringing, mares in foal onto the property and it being the first time, even though the staff's going to be very experienced. I want them to, not have that kind of pressure of starting the farm. So the horses that we have bought that are in foal will continue at Margot and they'll foal, there. And then once at that time, once those horses are stabilized, then they'll move over to our farm. We'll probably move the weanlings over first that we already purchased. And then the mares, once they foal, we'll start bringing those over to the farm and start that way. We have 148 stalls, so we have lots of capacity. We'll end up taking boarders in the short term, probably more the more like friends that are in the industry that don't have their own farms will be probably where most of that will come from. In getting things kind of up and running. But that's kind of the plan right now for the near term.
Wow. Need anyone to mow your grass? Like I'm in. I'm all in. I'll be on a plane tomorrow to Kentucky.
Anytime you want to come cut grass, we got lots of it.
Well, what's the long-term plan? Like where, if you could imagine, it seems like the funds are limitless. You're going to have a lot of friends in Kentucky now. They're beating down your door. Where can you see yourself in just 5 years? Ideally,
I want to make a significant impact on the racing side immediately. So I want to win. I want to win the Kentucky Derby. I mean, I think everybody in racing wants to win that, and we've seen there's a lot of really talented owners out there and trainers and people in the industry that have never won it. So it's elusive. You can have the best horse, and all of a sudden, the day of the race, you got a scratch, and the horse can't race, and it's disappointing. Those things happen. We see those things happen, every day in racing. So, that's definitely like an ultimate goal, being someone from Kentucky. And so on the racing side, it's to compete. It's to compete in a way that everybody looks at us and says that we're good sportsmen. The worst thing, and I tell every one of the trainers that I'm talking to, is I have zero tolerance for any type of issues. So like the worst thing that could happen is winning a prestigious race. and then to be disqualified after for some reason, whatever that is. And, I'm not going to get into all the political stuff of whether you should or shouldn't do this, that, or the other, but I don't want any of that. Like, I've built up my reputation, to the point, that it is today without that kind of controversy around it. And I don't want, anything controversial. I want the horse's well-being to be number one, as we're training the horses. Like I believe that the horse will tell us what it wants to do and when it's ready to do it. And so I want to, give the trainers the full latitude. But the horse's well-being comes first, and then respecting, the rules of the sport, are important. Those are important things. So, at the end of the day, when I'm dead and gone and people look back, I just hope people say that I had a positive impact on the sport. I think anybody would want the same thing, probably yourselves as well, is you just want people to think that you had what you did positively contributed to a sport that we all love and to animals that we love. That's at the end of the day, that's what I really want. And that's my goal. But of course I want to be competitive and I want to win.
John, before we let you go, let's scoop the world here on our podcast. What is going to be the name of your farm and racing operation?
So the farm is going to be Resolute Farm, and we're going to run under Resolute Racing. Okay. And so we chose Resolute because, I wanted to, I was thinking about, maybe bringing a farm back that had gone away and honoring the legacy. And a lot of people are like, John, you need to put your own stamp on this. And, if you've been at any of the auctions and you see the way that I bid, I'm a determined bidder, I think I've been called. In anything I do in life, I'm determined, for it to work. Sometimes I believe you will things, into existence. You make them happen. And so, I'm very resolute on what we're doing here. So there's a meaning behind it. It's just not some guy, that, just is jumping into the industry. This has been, calculated, and we've, have a very specific strategy of what we're trying to do. And so, that's, those are the names that we've come up with and what we're going to be establishing for the farm and for the racing.
John, I apologize in advance if this is a loaded question.
No, it's okay.
I know a lot of people in the industry that have been around a long time are probably thinking the same thing. And I know you've thought about this. We've all been around a while, and we've seen very successful people in the business world and people with a lot of money come into the sport and make a big splash. None as big as this. This is next level stuff. And then maybe 10, 15 years later, they look at the spreadsheet and they go, oh no, we've lost way too much money. Love the sport, but we can't keep doing this. Mm-hmm. What makes this venture different?
Well, I'm going to make it profitable. It's going to be a profit. It's not a hobby. Like, this isn't a hobby, look, on the day to day, I'm going to trust horsemen to run the business, and let them make the decisions. Sometimes when you're an accomplished business person, you want to control every aspect of everything. And, for others that may be, the way that they go about it, I'm going to be very involved strategically in what we're doing. And I'm going to be involved, but I'm going to trust people like yourselves, people that have been in the industry, people that know, how things work, to run my day-to-day operations of the business. I'm not going to be micromanaging my farm manager. I'm not going to be trying to tell him what to feed the horses. I'm not going to be micromanaging the trainers and try to tell them this is a race I want to run and this is where I want to be. I've always, in my career, I've always surrounded myself with people that I think are very smart. And then I try to empower them to do the job that they've been hired to do. You don't build a company like I built at my firm Middle Ground, which has offices all over the world, and we own 180 factories all over the world. I can't run 180 factories, and so that's not possible. So you have to surround yourself with good people. You have to trust them to make the decisions. Yes, I set the strategy. Yes, I'll set the framework, and yes, you'll see me out there, bidding. I enjoy that. I have a car collection as well, and like to do those things. But look, time will tell at the end of the day. I think, people may from a distance, they may make some comments. I've had people tell me you can't bid like that. People are going to run you up or, whatever, in the auction arena. And I don't know. I mean, this last time I bought several horses with one bid. How are you getting bid up if you make one bid? So, if people want to bid, if they want to run me up, you might run me up once. But, if you want to make $50,000 extra and risk never selling me another horse again, then run me up. Right. But, I'm paying fair prices for horses, which is good for the industry. If someone wants to take advantage of it, they'll take advantage of it once. And, I have a long memory. And so, that may happen. But, at the end of the day, I'm not paying any price for anything that I don't want out there.
Very good. Well, John, thanks again so much for your time. It's always exciting to have a new face in the business, particularly somebody who is so ambitious and so bullish on the future of horse racing. Thanks for being our Green Group Guest of the Week, and best of luck with Resolute Racing and Resolute Farm.
Thank you very much.
He definitely doesn't need it. But as the Green Group Guest of the Week, John Stewart will receive a free 1-hour tax consultation. And who knows, John probably loves free stuff with the Green Group. For more information on how the Green Group can save you money on your taxes, visit www.greenco.com.
Are you paying too much in taxes? The Green Group can help. There's a reason the most successful owners, breeders, and horsemen select the Green Group as their tax advisors. They save you money and share successful strategies. Over the past 40 years, the Green Group founder, Len Green, has owned and bred some of the best racehorses in the history of the sport, like Eclipse Award-winning champions Jaywalk and Wonder Wheel. His DJ stable competes at the highest level and has received the game's most prestigious honors. Len Green's in-depth, hands-on industry knowledge, combined with cutting-edge tax-saving strategies, has produced positive results for his clientele and has made the Green Group the top-rated accounting and tax firm in the thoroughbred business. For a confidential and complimentary consultation, contact us at 732-634-5100 or visit our website at www.greenco.com. The Green Group, proven strategies to save you taxes.
With some of the fullest fields in the country and quality racing year-round, there's never been a better time to reap the rewards of breeding and racing in Kentucky. Purse money in Kentucky is at an all-time high, as is average purse per race, outpacing California, Florida, and New York. Kentucky breds. Breed them, raise them, race them. We all win.
The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Kentucky Breds. Kentucky Breds once again demonstrated their brilliance against the world's best on Breeders' Cup Championship weekend, highlighted by an impressive victory, thanks Randy, from White Abarrio in the Classic. On Breeders' Cup Friday, it was Fierceness, Hard to Justify, and Just FYI, who stamped themselves as future stars with wins in the juvenile events. And on Saturday, Kentucky Bred scored repeat wins by Cody's Wish in the Dirt Mile, Goodnight Olive, we already mentioned her a lot, in the filly and mare sprint, as well as Elite Power in the sprint. The 9 wins over 2 days gives Kentucky Breds 249 Breeders' Cup victories, more than any state or any country. Kentucky Breds, breed them, buy them, raise them.
Another big story out of the week was the announcement that Del Mar will be getting the Breeders' Cup for 2025. Now, what that means is that there'll be 3 straight years of Breeders' Cups in Southern California, starting with this year at Santa Anita, next year at Del Mar, and then 2 straight at Del Mar. So we're going to go away again from the East Coast, from the Midwest, etc. It was a little bit of a surprise, but then when you read between the lines, it looks like what happened was that the Breeders' Cup didn't really have much of a choice. Keeneland normally would be next in the rotation for 2025. But they have this big project they're undergoing where they're rebuilding the paddock. And apparently they told Breeders' Cup that the facility wouldn't be in the right shape to host the Breeders' Cup in 2025. I don't know if Santa Anita applied for it or not. Maybe Zoe knows. That hasn't come out. But if you take Santa Anita and Keeneland out of the mix, you're really left with just Del Mar. And one of the things that's happened now is looks like until Belmont Park is rebuilt and ready to go, it's supposed to reopen in 2026. The Breeders' Cup is only looking at 3 facilities, Keeneland, Del Mar, and Santa Anita. So it raises a couple questions. First of all, Randy, how do you feel about having the Breeders' Cup 3 straight years in the West Coast, 2 straight years at Del Mar? And, you might know more than the average bear about what's going on with Churchill Downs because of your connections with NBC. But apparently it looks like Churchill Downs is out of the equation. They haven't had the Breeders' Cup since 2018, and they're never mentioned anymore. So that's why it looks like we've gotten down to 3 tracks.
I know Zoe's got an interesting theory about Churchill Downs as it regards to the Breeders' Cup, and I'll let her go there. I won't steal any of that thunder. But as far as Southern California, hey, I'm in. It's happened before. Santa Anita hosted multiple Breeders' Cups consecutively. Look, you're going to get great weather. Chances are you're going to get the nice firm turf that horse racing likes, that the Europeans actually prefer when they bring their horses over here. I think the Europeans have a better time coming to Southern California. It also, from a TV perspective, it tends to work better because you're in prime time on some of the major TV markets in the East Coast. So there are a lot of benefits to having the Breeders' Cup in Southern California. And as far as I'm concerned, if you ask me, hey, you can have the Breeders' Cup anywhere you want this year, Randy, where would it be? Del Mar for me. So Zoe, what about Churchill Downs and the Breeders' Cup looking at Churchill Downs as a potential site and not going to Churchill Downs? What are your theories on that?
I think it's pretty obvious. When you look at the bigger scheme of things and the Churchill Downs Bob Baffert saga that's been going on for the past 3 years, he's not welcome at Churchill. He's not welcome in 2024 for the Derby. Maybe they'll extend that through to the Breeders' Cup. So Breeders' Cup doesn't want to exclude anyone, and they shouldn't. They have nothing against Hall of Famer Bob Baffert. He had while not winning, he had a pretty successful Breeders' Cup here this time around. So, if you're looking between the lines, that's exactly where you need to look. He's welcome in Southern California and pretty much everywhere else. I'm in agreement that the Breeders' Cup probably should be at Santa Anita every year, as far as I'm concerned. It's a bigger facility. Del Mar's great, but you have limited people that can get to Del Mar. What was it, 30,000 or something at Del Mar? It's not a very big facility whatsoever, and they handled it brilliantly. They really did. It was a comfortable Breeders' Cup at Del Mar. The Europeans, hey, if I'm living and working in England, like I did for many years, and someone said to me, hey, Breeders' Cup, do you want to go to New York where you're going to freeze your ass off? Do you want to go to Monmouth where it's going to be a monsoon? Or do you want to go to California? Well, hey, guess what? I want to go to California. We saw Rick Dutcher went to Disneyland after he took down the Classic. I think the host at the Breeders' Cup should pay, just like they do in the NBA or whatever sport it is, to send them to Disneyland. Send the winner of the Breeders' Cup Classic every year to Disneyland. That would be fantastic, and people would love it. So, yes, I am delighted that it is in Southern California, and Del Mar did a great job. Nobody can complain.
This year at the Breeders' Cup, Bill, I checked into my hotel, which was in Monrovia, just down the street from Santa Anita. And I checked in on Monday, and at my hotel, there were a lot of horsemen. There were a lot of Godolphin people there. There were a lot of people there. It was like the hotel of choice, not a luxury hotel, but the hotel of choice for a lot of the exercise riders and the grooms and the traveling lads and all that for the Europeans. So I check in on Monday. I'm at the front desk, and I look over to my right. It's mid-afternoon on Monday. The pool is absolutely packed. In November, right? It was November 1st or maybe October 31st. I think it was Halloween.
Where are you? Which hotel?
The DoubleTree.
Yeah, you're right down the street from me.
Right by the highway on Huntington Drive, down the street from Santa Anita. There were probably 100 people at the swimming pool, and I went out there just out of curiosity. 99.9% of them were European. having a great time at the pool. And I think it just sort of drove it home to me how much the Europeans enjoy coming to Southern California for a Breeders' Cup. If it was at Louisville, if it was at Lexington in late October, early November, I don't think there'd be anybody out at the pool, put it that way.
There were a lot of red faces and an awful lot of sunburn. But I have one other thing that I'd like to add. So we were all there on Saturday, Randy, you were, and I was one of the people doing the mass exodus, I hate to say it, after the Classic. Like, I'm going to get out of here, I'm going to watch the final two at home. I live in Monrovia, it's just down the road. No problem. And I understand why they had to put the Classic earlier. So here's one thing, and maybe we could get this out. Why not make the Classic the first Breeders' Cup race? If it has to be held earlier because of TV rights and everything, make it race number one. You think people are going to spend a fortune on their tickets and leave after the first race? Make the Classic the first Breeders' Cup race on Breeders' Cup Saturday. People are going to stay throughout the day. If you make it 2 races before the end, there's going to be a mass exodus next year as well. Make it early. Make people get in, get them in the seats, and make the Classic an early race.
All those people miss no balls.
I know, right? What a great gelding.
Zoe, some good out of the box thinking there. Randy, one more thing before we go here. And Zoe has a very interesting theory about Baffert and Churchill Downs. And if she's right, that would mean that Churchill Downs, who is now only suspended Baffert through 2024, would be contemplating extending the ban, which would be something that I think universally all three of us would be very much against. And I think at this point, most people in horse racing would be very much against. But I don't understand all the economics, but how the money is divided up between the Breeders' Cup and the host track, whereas apparently the real, the money, the serious money doesn't go to the host track, it goes to the Breeders' Cup. I've heard that Churchill Downs just is can't come to a financial agreement with them and wants more money. Is that something that is you've heard as well?
I don't know, Bill, but it wouldn't surprise me. I know that the Breeders' Cup, when they have a host track that hosts the Breeders' Cup, gives up almost complete control to the Breeders' Cup of, all the box seat revenue and the reserve seat revenue and all that. The Breeders' Cup just basically comes in and almost takes over. And I know that some tracks have had an issue with that and have decided that it's not, they might actually lose money hosting the Breeders' Cup as opposed to making any kind of a financial windfall. As far as the Baffert thing goes, the way I don't know this, I don't have any inside information, I haven't asked about it, but the way I could see it happening is the Breeders' Cup, if they did go to Churchill Downs, they would say, okay, can you give us a guarantee that Bob Baffert will be able to race at the Breeders' Cup in November of 2024? And if you're Churchill Downs, and we know their take on Baffert right now, would you be willing to absolutely give the Breeders' Cup a guarantee in November of 2023 that you will definitely not have Baffert continuing on suspension? My guess would be probably they wouldn't go quite that far as to guarantee that. So I could see the conversation developing sort of in that regard.
Yeah, I can definitely see it. And the money side as well. For sure, host tracks don't make any money. There's really no upside other than the prestige of having the Breeders' Cup there. And we know that Churchill Downs they like prestige, but they also like money, and so do their stockholders. I wish I'd have bought some stock in Churchill. I'd be rich by now. They've done right by their stockholders. I will say that much. They've done very, very well by them.
Yes, they have.
The TDN Writers' Room is brought to you by XBTV. The XBTV Workout of the Week features 2 Promises juveniles trained by the aforementioned Bob Baffert. They went 4 furlongs in 48-4 at Santa Anita on November the 12th. Pinecone broke her maiden in fine fashion at Los Al by 5 lengths in September, and she worked with Showcard, a promising Juddmonte homebred daughter of Intermischief who has yet to make her first start, but she sure looks like she's ready for it. We'll be right back after this message from XBTV.
all the thrills. Fraction of the bills. Experience the power of the partnership. Change your life, make new friends, and compete at the highest level of thoroughbred racing. West Point Thoroughbreds, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Visit westpointtb.com.
The TDN Writers Room brought to you by West Point Thoroughbreds, where joining a West Point partnership can vault you into the world of instant camaraderie. Last week, West Point won 4 races, including 2 in their partnership with Hall of Fame trainer Shug McGahee, the debuting 2-year-old Cugino and the re-emerging 3-year-old Signator. It's a hot streak with West Point plus McGahee. That's 5 wins in their last 7 starts together. And this Saturday, they'll look to keep that streak going with Integration, the Virginia Derby winner, who takes his 2-for-2 record into the Grade 2 Hill Prince Stakes for 3-year-olds on the grass at Aqueduct. If you're interested in joining a West Point partnership, go to West Point TB as in thoroughbred, westpointtb.com.
All right, that's a wrap on this week's show. I want to thank my partners, Randy Moss, Zoe Cadman, our Green Group Guest of the Week, John Stewart, our co-producers, Katie Petruniak and Anthony LaRocca, our editors, Aaliyah LaRocca and Nathan Wilkinson, and she's back, and our mascot, Lucy, right over Randy's right shoulder. Thanks, everybody, for tuning us in. We'll talk to you next week.
I won't be here next week. I'm going to go cut grass for John Stewart.